Welcome to yet another episode of Hello Irlandia Show. We are live streaming a special Irish edition of free-flowing conversation entitled Anankara. I'm Katarzyna Czekaj and I'm your host. I'm happy that you decided to join us tonight to meet our new guest. I think it will be worthwhile your time because we are going to talk about Irish subjects, so very close to our Irish viewers' heart. Please help us out by following and subscribing to our social media channels and help share and free content in our network. Support true independent media, support freedom of speech, and support freedom of thought. Support Hello Irlandia. If you want to support us, you can simply buy us a coffee via the link below. And I'm excited to welcome for the second time, but this time in English, our wonderful guest, Dr. Jan Przybył. Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
It's nice to see you again. Dr. Przybył obtained a Ph.D. from theology, and he used to be an academic lecturer for 18 years, teaching history of the church and history of the Polish culture in a Christian Academy of Theology in Warsaw. He is also a translator for printing house Wektory in Wrocław, Poland. He is also a tourist guide who dozens of times visited with Polish and foreign tourists historical places in Ukraine. He has been a regular guest also on a YouTube channel, Na Argumenty, which is like with arguments, I would say, to translate it. And he has also his channel, Przybyl TV, where he talks mainly about the Polish and European culture. And today we will be talking about the Celtic spirituality, Celtic Christianity. So, Dr. Przybył, can you tell us how your adventure with Celtic spirituality and Celtic Christianity started?
Wow. It all started in 1992, I think. I was no, in 1993. I was visiting a gentleman called Fitzgerald of Irish origin, and I got interested in the Celtic Christianity and in monasticism in total, because he had a huge library, and I found a book on Celtic monasticism. What's all about? And on the way back to London, I used to stay for 2 weeks in London, and the neighbor, he was a Methodist minister who had visited Iona, and he had brought some books, and because the weather was bad, I borrowed these books and I started to read through, and then I traveled to Oxford, and in one of the second-hand bookshops I bought a wonderful book, The Holy Places of the British Isles. A wonderful book, very poetical language, and wonderful photographies. And I said to myself, I must visit all those places. Of course, I did not, because I never been to Ireland. But
well, you have to make up for it. Definitely, now you have many, people who can visit and stay with, and we can drive around.
Well, and I found an interesting picture and the description. The picture is of Iona, and I found on the map where it was, and was the edge of the world.
Yes.
The Columba the Younger, he wrote the letter to the Pope, and he described Irish people as those who live at the edge of the world.
Yeah,
And
that's true. Very accurate.
And Columba, he started from Ireland on exile, and he came to Iona and settled there and formed a community of monks in this place. But with this book, in my hands, I travel all over England and Scotland. It all started with this, and this minister, this Methodist minister, had a book. I bought this book for myself. It's by Esther de Wall, A World Made Whole, Discovering Celtic Christianity. It's quite interesting. And then I promised myself that the very next year I would go to Iona, so I did. And this is all on my films. All the story, how I got there. Well, I did not book at all. So when I came there was nowhere to stay. A lot of adventures. But anyway, I started buying books there. And I bought some books on Iona because they have a bookshop. And but before I went to Iona, I went to the Holy Island of Lindisfarne in Northumberland, and there's a wonderful walk through the sands. On the low tide, you had to walk 5 kilometers through the sands.
Oh, fantastic!
Barefoot. It's a wonderful experience. Was by the end of the 19th century, they put pools to mark the way, which the medieval pilgrims used to walk. So I've been there twice, barefoot.
Is it still possible to walk from the shore to the island when the tide is out?
Yes, when the tide is out, there is a asphalt road.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's a little bit like with Saint Michel in France.
Yes, okay. But when the tides come in, it's 2 meters of water.
Wow, that's some experience.
So wonderful places, and I got some books also there because the monastery on Lindisfarne was founded by the monk sent from Iona. His name was Saint Aidan, and another saint influenced by Celtic spirituality was St. Cuthbert, who is the patron of the Northern England, and his place of rest is in Durham Cathedral. The biggest Norman cathedral in England, I think.
Wow.
It's huge. It's really huge. And the other side is a tomb of St. Beda the Venerable, the first English historian.
Wow.
So I traveled.
Well versed in all these things.
Well, I traveled through all these places with a tent. Rucksack and tent.
That's how to do it, like cheaply, and I guess it's an adventure as well,
It is, yes, it is. I try to travel as cheap as possible, of course, because at that time, the early 90s, the price of the English currency was incredible high for the Poles, you know.
Absolutely, yes. So, can you maybe, before I ask about Anamkara, can you maybe tell us how you came across that book and the author?
Well, I bought this book in a bookshop on Iona, because the weather was bad for 3 days. So I stayed in my tent reading the book, and I decided to translate this book and to started a publishing house to issue this book. So I did. I run this
Yes.
publishing house for 6 years.
Oh. And you met also the very author of this book,
Yes.
Father John O'Donoghue, right?
Yes. I received a letter from his agent that she would visit the book fair in Leipzig in Germany. So I traveled there. So we met for 2 hours maybe, and he had no more time. But it was a very interesting man, very tall one, and I would never think he would. He was a priest, no, rather a, I don't know, who, fisherman maybe.
All right. Well, I guess the priest, there is a certain stereotype of a priest in Ireland, and it was memorized in a series called Father Ted. I don't know
Yes,
if you
I've
have.
seen this very
Yeah,
very
that's
stupid one.
kind of probably towards that, a bit of a funny, a little bit clumsy, just, like an average person man.
Typical English. Typical
Yeah,
English.
yeah. So let's dive maybe a little bit into the very subject of Celtic spirituality. Anamkara, the soul's friend. I believe that's how it's being translated into English. How would you
Yes.
explain the concept, the spirit of Celtic Christianity? What is unique for the Western eyes of the coast of continental Europe that they brought such a distinct Christian culture? Is it maybe the isolation and solitude that gives that kind of Christianity a different dimension, new dimension, different for the continental Europe?
There are many factors contributing in this. Solitude is one thing, and isolation also, because they, for about 400 years, they had no connection to the continental Europe because of the Viking rights.
Yeah.
And well, I think, but they had a connections with the Constantinople and Egypt. There are some
Via
evidence in the sources, in the written sources. For example, uh, I've read of 7 monks visiting Ireland from Egypt who died of plague.
wow.
As it's written in a litany of Leinster, I think. Yes, and on one of the high crosses in Ireland, there are carved 2 fishes, which are only in Egypt. You can find them only in Egypt.
Uh-huh. The
It's
pattern.
interesting.
Okay.
And 2 very important saints in Ireland at that time were St. Anthony the Great, who founded the monasticism, and St. Paul of Tib, the second one.
Right.
And the very idea of Anamkara, it's the when you read through so-called desert fathers, and early monasticism in Egypt and Syria of 4th and 5th centuries, and there is a old monk, very experienced one, whom they called Abbas in the Aramaic language, which is the dialect of Syrian. Abbas, which means the father, and he was like a spiritual advisor and counselor, as well as the man who is famous for being a priest who receives confessions. And in Orthodox, in Eastern Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Belarusian, Ukrainian Orthodox, Romanian, there is a, especially in Russia, there is a man called Staret. It means the elder.
Mm-hmm.
In Greece, Geronda. For this day, you go to Greece to Meteora monasteries or to the holy Mount Athos. You can find Geronda, which is the same as Anamkara. So they pick up the idea from the east.
Okay, so would you say that there is a connection or some influence from the East Church?
Yes,
East
and
Christianity, essentially.
and very
In sense
very
of the monastic life, or is there anything else?
monastic, especially monastic, because the early Christianity in Ireland was the Christianity focused just around monasteries. The abbot was more important than the bishop. The Christianity in Ireland was a rural Christianity. There were no towns in Ireland at that time. And the Christianity in Ireland, the Irish monasticism was a tribal one. Quite often, the very important clansman became a head of the monastery. It was because there was no such a thing as diocese, because the Western Church, the Latin Church, they developed an organization after the reforms, administrative reforms of the Caesar Diocletian. And so they adopted, they structured the organization. And because the Romans never entered Ireland, so it was quite a different civilization.
Well, I came across some statements that there might have been some visits, but obviously they are very kind of it's arbitrary, but there's some kind of connection probably from British Isles existed maybe from time to time. Some
maybe, yeah, but
were made, but
the most important thing was that the Christianity of the British Isles differs from the continental one, because the Pope Gregory the Great, when he sent his 40 monks to Kent in 597, he ordered them not to destroy the old places of cult, but to christen them. So there's a lot of holy wells and things like that all over Britain. Which was,
and in Ireland as well, there's a lot of them.
Yes, and they were recognized as holy places before Christianity came.
Yes.
So there is an interesting story of a Coifi, who was a priest, a pagan priest, and he entered his own shrine on horseback and with a spear, and he broke the taboo. The priest was forbidden to ride a horse and to bring weapon. So he throw this javelin into the wooden sculpture of the god. So the local folks see that, oh wow, he was not killed by the gods. So they converted to Christianity.
Yes, it's very interesting.
It was very, very peaceful way of the organization of the British Isles. Very peaceful way. So there is a big difference.
Yeah, and it's a pity that because of the Reformation movement, a lot of those beautiful historical abbeys and churches were destroyed
Yes, yes. I have a saying. I really hate Henry VIII.
I don't think he was a very likable character. Doesn't matter how you look at him.
He was very well educated. He spoke fluently Latin and Greek and French and maybe some German. And there's a wonderful book by Mary Law, Celtic Christianity and Nature, Early Irish and Hebridean Traditions. Wonderful book. It's a lot of descriptions of the holy places in Ireland, and she explains how was it possible to convert the country without violence. It's a wonderful story. It's too long story.
Would you say that the role of nature is very significant for Celtic spirituality, moreover than on the continent?
Yes, but there is on the continent we have St. Francis as this type of spirituality.
Yeah.
But I think some 40, 50 years ago, the so-called Celtic Christianity, I think was kidnapped by New Age movement. And this is why some scholars had to react, and this reaction is the booklet by Elizabeth Culling. What is Celtic Christianity? Because if you enter the bookshop, the books on the Celtic Christianity are on the shelf of cults, and very often it's not the Celtic Christianity at all. It is a New Age vision of Celtic Christianity, because the Christian Celts, they did not worship nature. They worship God, and they praised God for the beauty of the nature, but they did not adore nature. They were deeply biblical and Trinitarian.
Yeah, but I would say that maybe nature was influencing how they lead their lives and the philosophy, spirituality. I think that's probably a very strong influence of the way people used to, the early Celtic Christians. Because Ireland has a very specific nature, right? And it's also an isolated island, so I suppose that kind of deep spirituality is in a way encouraged by that nature, and the way we have literally like a few months of warm weather, from time to time warm weather, and then you have 6 months of really gray, gloomy, cold, windy climate, which is quite depressing, I would say.
Well, I was traveling for many times in the Western Isles, and I remember for 2 or 3 occasions was raining for about 6 days, day and night, with a short interval of maybe half an hour, and just in those short intervals, when the sun started to shine, was millions of midges.
Yes, I had a adventure with them as well. Well, to be honest with you, in the rural island, especially around animals, which is plenty because you have everywhere sheep and cows.
Yep.
These things, unfortunately, like the lovely weather is great when it comes eventually. We are waiting for it at the minute.
But
But
in
there comes
Highlands,
the midgets with that. Yeah,
in
unfortunately. Yes.
Highlands, I was traveling in 2019. I was traveling from Ullapool to Inverness. I stayed in a wonderful hotel, small hotel in Verschin, and just after 7 o'clock, 7 to 8 o'clock, was impossible to get outside the pub because of the midges. And the locals used to say, "Midges, the Highland curse."
Yeah, not only that, not only that. Okay, so just coming back to the Celtic Christianity, how do you see the traditional Celtic Christianity reconciling a lot of local superstitions, folk beliefs, namely the ghosts, banshees, fairies? Fairies are big thing here.
Yes,
This
I love
is
fairies.
very,
I love fairies.
very, you love fairies. This
Yes,
is very
I believe in fairies. I believe in dwarves.
okay. How is that, reconciling then with, the Catholic Church? Because the Catholic Church has the tendency to distance itself from any
Oh,
ghost
no.
investigators approaching the other world, beyond the grave, and does not encourage believing in mischievous spirits, definitely. And yet the Celtic islands are full of those ancient pagan megalithic ruins, unique structures, and sacred places, for instance, fairy rings, full of strange and otherworldly presence. Not to mention, of course, multiple haunted castles, pubs, and so on. So, is there a contradiction, or is there a symbiosis, or are these two words are just parallel to each other? How to reconcile all that?
Well, this was the subject of books written by John O'Donoghue, and he tried to explain that the modern man tend to expel all these spiritual beings from our world. But what is about Celtic Christianity is they deeply believed in the presence of spiritual beings all around us. And when we confess in our creed the community of the saints,
Yeah.
so we confess that we are not alone. We are surrounded by the invisible beings.
But these beings, are they the saints, the souls that passed over to the other world? Or what about all those fairies? They are not exactly, falling into that category. Saints.
But we do not see this or that, but it does not mean that those beings do not exist.
Okay.
And when you compare the old movies, old horror movies,
yeah,
to the present ones, what was characteristic in the old horror movies? That all the vampires and all these demons could be expelled by the sign of a cross. They were very afraid of the of the sign of a cross. But in this new horrors, it's not enough. You have to know the pagan incantations, spells, things like that. Christianity do not work at all in the new films. That's interesting. But in the old movies like Nosferatu, things like that, it was enough to show this, and the vampire.
Yes, that is true. So,
you see,
in this sense,
the holy water and the other things, it disappeared.
Why do you think that is?
This is a tendency of secularization. What is interesting about Celtic Christianity, they believed that we live in the presence of God. It's not that God is in this place or that place, and I have to go to this place to meet God. No, God is here. God is
All
here.
around.
It's all around. And this is very biblical. St. Paul writes that we live in Him. But when the people sin, they tend to forget that God is present and He sees them. But the Celts, they used to start any kind of activity with the sign of a cross and with a short prayer. And there was a huge collections, of which 2 volumes were published, of Carmina Gedelica. There was a man, Alexander Carmichael, and he worked, I think, in Inverness, was a he used to work as in customs, I think. I can't remember. So he traveled all over Highlands and the islands, collecting all incantations and songs and things like that. And there's also a poet, David Adam, and I have 2 of his books, The Cry of a Dare, Meditations on the Hymns of St. Patrick. Wonderful poetry. And the second, The Edge of Glory, Prayers in the Celtic Tradition. And this is the Lindisfarne Castle, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, the Irish people, they have to know that they saved the European civilization. There was a time when the Greek language was unknown in Europe, in continental Europe. But monks in the Irish monasteries knew this language. And the mission to the court of the Charlemagne in France was with the monks from York, educated by the Irish monks, and they knew Greek. And they brought Greek and the good Latin to teach those on the continent in Gaul. And there's a wonderful book issued in Poland in Polish language, How the Irish Saved the Civilization.
And who's the author? Okay, this is a British author, Thomas Cahill. Okay, Irish, right?
Yes. Now, next, Visions and Voyages: The Story of Celtic Spirituality. A wonderful book.
Hi, Samson.
So this what Iona, our Celtic heritage, looking at our own faith in the light of Celtic Christianity, a study guide for Christian groups. I bought it on Iona. Wonderful things, but some Poles were the very well known in academic circles as those who explored the Celtic achievements. For this is very thick book, you know. You see this, very thick one.
Yeah, I know the series. Yeah.
Profesor Szelczyk i rozkoci w kulturze średniowiecznej Europy. The Irish Cults in the Culture of a Medieval Europe by Jerzy Szelczyk.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book.
Szkoci. Okay, so Irish Scots.
Yeah. And another two books I want to show you. The Christianity and the Celts, wonderful illustrated on a very good paper. This one's interesting with the introduction of Professor Szelczyk. It's very well known.
Sailing of St. Bernard.
Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
St. Brendan. He and his 12 companions they set on a journey having no oars, because there was a typical Celtic. They used to sail. They used to set on a journey without oars, and they stopped wherever the currents bring them.
Took them, yeah.
And they used to settle there. And Brendan, they started the journey in the search of the land of the living, which is the equivalent of a Celtic paradise. Very, very interesting thing. And several centuries later, some folks built a boat, and they covered the route of St. Brendan, and they reached Northern America.
Wow.
There was a very funny story. They were sailing through close to the island, where they thought it was the entrance to the hell, because the devils used to throw the stones red hot into them, but those sailors who covered the route of St. Brendan, they discovered they were very close to the Iceland and the volcanoes.
Oh, all right. But St. Brendan interpreted it as, some stones thrown by a devil. Okay.
Yes, that they were devils who were throwing the stones.
Wow.
And they spent the Easter on the back of the big whale. I love those stories. I love those.
Yeah, it is fascinating how in old times people managed to make really huge voyages and sailing all around those isles, northern areas on the edge of Europe. Coming back to Father John O'Donoghue, he was a priest, a poet, a philosopher. And he was very popular in the Anglo-Saxon world, so to speak. Is it only that world that seems to be resonating with his books, judging by the popularity of them in English? And what can other cultures, societies, for instance, the Polish Christian, adopt from his beautiful presentation of Celtic spirituality? Like, how can we? Nothing.
He sold some 3 or 4 million books all over the world, and I had difficulties to sell 2,000.
But would you say that there is something that people could definitely benefit, let's say in the east of Europe, or I don't know, the
Yes,
central
yes,
Europe?
yes. There's
What would be?
many things would be very quite obvious to the Eastern Christians, to the Orthodox Christians. But
Okay, so
the
more on
Roman
the stone.
Catholicism in Poland is very strange to me. I'm not a Roman Catholic. I'm Orthodox.
Okay, you're Orthodox. Well, I take it that
This
your
is my
family was
choice. This is
Catholic,
my
right?
choice. Sorry?
You converted, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I used to be a Methodist for 30 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a journey from Catholic to Methodist to what made you, if I can ask, what made you change? Because that's quite a, I don't know, to me, quite an opposite kind of ends of Christianity, Methodist and Orthodox. Or maybe
Well,
I'm
my travels and my studies.
okay.
I visited Iona for 12, maybe 13 times. I can't remember. And I've read a lot. I prayed a lot and things like that. So all this, it was a process of 20 years.
Wow. That is quite a jump from a Methodist to
Yes, yes.
an
And
Orthodox.
they found the Protestant way very shallow waters.
Okay. And what was the maybe impulse or some influence that made you try the Methodist way? Like what was like different
Simplicity,
from Catholic
simplicity,
simplicity? Uh-huh.
simplicity. And by the end of the 70s, early 80s, the Polish Roman Catholicism was very strongly mixed with a very strange sort of patriotic feelings and things like that. And so the Pole is a Catholic and things like that. Religion was very, very shallow, and it is still is today. Quite superstitious. The people, they, I mean, 90%, they do not know in what they believe, really. Uh, uh, I met
So-called
the young,
cultural Christianity, yeah.
yes,
So
I met the
they
young
say.
people. I met the young people, Polish nationalists, who shouted on the street. They shouted, "The great Catholic Poland." When I asked them some questions, um, they could not say the Ten Commandments in the proper way. Strange.
So I'd say for someone who would like to kind of uh, strengthen their faith and deepen their faith, we should generally turn to the Holy Word, like to Bible and all the rest of it, and try to study. So I suppose Methodists and in general the Evangelical Church is good like that, right? Because they work a lot with the word. I know, judging by my husband, who is from the Pentecostal church, um, they actually, can quote things from the Bible, whereas I don't think an average Catholic can,
Yes,
unless
but
someone is really very well versed.
the Methodism, it makes a difference because um, it's quite different than the Lutheran way or
Hmm.
Calvin way is quite different because Wesley, he used to read, the founder of Methodist, he used to read a lot of church fathers,
Hmm.
far more than the
That's
Luther. And
Methodist is from the America, yeah. This is where it came.
No, it
from,
was,
right?
it was born in England.
It was in England, but it's
Yes.
quite popular in America. I'd
Yes,
say.
it's quite popular in America. It used to be the cradle of Methodist is England, and the Industrial Revolution. It all started by that time. Wesley discovered the new founded settlements. Like coal miners and things like that, they had no church at all. They had a lot of pubs and hotels, and no church at all. So they started to travel. Was a traveling missionary. Used to travel all over England. He covered some 40,000 miles, I think, during his lifetime. But I bought a book on Iona also. I bought a book on Iona. It is about the future of Christianity, the next Christendom. And I read that the Africa is the next continent to be a leader of Christianity.
I would say so, judging by my own experiences with the community of Africans and what they are saying about
Yes.
The society there and how they treat the faith quite seriously, and they're quite resistant to all the new, fashions, so to speak, of various colors and alphabet letters and all the rest of it.
But the
very resistant.
But Archbishop of York, I think that, he's retired, I think. But he was a African, and he was a black man. And he used to say some 20 years ago or so that in 19th century, the white men from Europe, they used to come to Africa to convert those heathen. And now we come to Europe to evangelize.
Yeah.
Yes.
pretty much.
And this is true.
So coming back to the Holy Isle of Iona, you've done a lot of trips there. You've been going there for over 20 years. So can you tell us about the history of this fascinating place? And what keep drawing you there? Like, why do you kind of keep coming back every year, pretty much?
It's very difficult to say because it's as poets say, there is something in the air. It's a special atmosphere. It's a special atmosphere. When I approached Iona for the first time, I landed in Feinport, which is the little village with a ferry to Iona. The crossing, it takes about 10 minutes only by the ferry, but you see the Iona from the distance of maybe kilometer. It's a very narrow stripe of water. It's very deep. So it's over a mile, I think, depth. And this is something mystical. When I landed on the islands, I used to say my breviary among the rocks on Iona before the sunset. Was this something which I cannot explain, but it was something. But the old woman in the Carmina Gadelica, the old woman told to Alexander Carmichael that on Iona, the heavens are just about 1 foot over the man's head. There is something in it, yeah. and I have to return to Iona as much times as possible, but I could not, this so-called pandemia, and it's like that. So the last time I was on Iona was 2018. It's been 5 years then. So it's the time to go again this year.
Are you planning this year?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I will try to show some clips from your trip. So in the meantime, if you can tell us, for people who would like to go there, because from what I understood from your kind of little from your trips and films, here we are. This island is quite popular.
There is a ferry. There is a ferry to Oban. This is the Isle of Mull. It's ferry to Oban. So first of all, from Ireland, you have to come to Glasgow, I think. And from Glasgow, there is a train to Oban. There are buses to Oban, and you have to come to Oban and then go on a ferry to the Isle of Mull. And while you're on the Isle of Mull, the buses, those people, they wait for the bus. Or the bus is waiting for the ferry to come. So just straight from the ferry, you go on the bus and you go to Fynford, just to the end of the isle. And there is Iona is visible from the place where the bus stops. But you have to book in advance through internet, because there are so many people visiting those places. It's very difficult to find a place to stay, except booking. You have to book. Now it's very easy. You have internet. It's very easy. And there's the cheapest place. This campsite is quite expensive in Craignure. But if you got on the bus and just go to Fynford, just to the last stop, then from Fynford you can ask for the way to Fidden Farm, and there's a huge campsite there, much cheaper than the one in Craignure. Well, I don't know how much they charge now, because the last time I've been there was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, it was £10. And I don't know how much is it now, but you have Fidden Farm on the internet, so you have to check. Just you need to check it. But this is the cheapest way from Glasgow to Oban, and from Oban you have to board the ferry to Craignure on the Isle of Mull, and from the Isle of Mull the bus to Fynford, and that's it. And that's it. Bed and breakfast. Last time I was on Iona was about 40 or 50 pounds a night in bed and breakfast, but camping is much cheaper. But I, as a Pole, I have to count every pound, But it is what I say. Just the first you have to go to. You have to come to Glasgow from Scotland, yeah. And from Glasgow, it's quite easy. It's quite easy. Just train or bus to Oban. That's what I wanted to say about traveling. There are shops in Fynford, as well as there are shops on Iona. So from Fidden Farm, you have to walk about 25 to 30 minutes to the village from the campsite, and on the way back from Iona, it's wise to do some shopping for the next day. It's okay. So you travel through all those villages. You see. Oh yeah, this is the bus stop, and you see Iona just very close. You buy in the office. You buy a return ticket to Iona. You have to be aware of the last ferry, and that's it. When the weather is fine, you see. It's a very, very specific smell. The smell of the sea, the smell of the sheep, and the grass, and all the plants. It's something special. Yeah. I can't hear you.
I actually was muted, so apologies. I just wanted to ask if there is, I will find another as well fragment with very Iona Island. Is there a place to stay there? Actually, on the
On
very
Iona.
Iona Island?
Yes, there are places to stay, but you have book in advance through the internet.
And that would be like bed and breakfast.
Yes, yes, many bed and breakfast, but there are plenty of people there, so you have to book in advance. The very first time I came to Iona, I did not book, so I had troubles. And I found the place in the very last minute. Can you just imagine 1994 and 27 pounds a night for the pole, when we earned about 18 pounds a month at that time. And one night, 27 pounds at that time. I spent 3 nights on Iona.
That's quite
I was saving money for the whole year for the trip.
Yes.
I can't hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I clicked myself out of the studio for a moment. Apologies, because I was looking for another fragment of Iona film. And
there is a small campsite on Iona now, because it was impossible to camp for many years on Iona. But now, the last time I was on Iona, I found a very small campsite. When the ferry comes to Iona, you have to go to the left. You have to go to the left, and then to the end of the road, and then up west. I think it was complicated, but very close to the pier, very close to the ferry. There is a shop Finleiros, and they know everything about the places to stay.
Here is the I understand the very monastery. Can you tell us the story about Iona and that monastery?
No. This is the ruins of a nunnery, medieval nunnery.
Oh, nunnery. Okay, there was a nunnery as well.
Yes.
Okay, and can we have a short story, like what is the history of Iona, about the settlement of the monks there?
Yes,
did it start, and the
yes.
renovation that happened in last century?
Yes. It was in the 6th century. In the 6th century, St. Columba, expelled from Ireland, he got on a boat with 12 companions, seeking the place of refuge, because he was expelled from Ireland for illegally copying the Psalter. And he was sentenced for the exile from Ireland, because after he was sentenced, there was a battle and some people were killed. So the blood was shed, and because he was of a noble origin, he was not killed, but he was ordered to get out of Ireland. So he traveled to Iona, and was 500. Wow, he died in 597, 563, I think. He got to Iona, and they burned the boat, not to be tempted to return. And they burned the boat and started the monastic life. So the first settlement was very simple, a simple hut made of wood, of branches, clay, things like that. And eventually, this cathedral, this monastery, is not of the time of St. Columba, of course. It is medieval. It is medieval, Benedictine abbey. That was the monks, the Celtic monks. They left Iona in 713 because of the rights of the Vikings. So they brought with them the relics of St. Columba and some books and other liturgical utensils, and they evacuated to Ireland. And the Irish Christianity survived to 1069, when the invasion of the English came under the Henry II. So there was the end of the Celtic Christianity, because they developed the Roman way there.
Okay, well, I'll try to show the renewed convent, yeah, the monastery. Here's some info. Here
oh yeah. There is a small. There's a small building, a very small one, behind the cross to the left. It used to be a place when St. Columba had his cell. Was built on the place.
Yeah, so that's how it looks. Short clip.
Yeah.
So this is renewed, rebuilt, right? Who managed to rebuild it, because it took quite some time?
Yes. Well, just wait a second. Wait a second.
Yes, the place is quite impressive. think our guest is looking for another book, possibly.
Okay. This is you have some trouble when you have too much books, too many books. Sorry, this is the book by then leader of the Iona community, Ronald Ferguson, George MacLeod, founder of the Iona community, was the man. He was the Scottish Presbyterian minister, and he used to work amongst the so-called troubled youth in Glasgow. So they started to organize the summer camps on Iona on the 10th, and they taught all those youth to rebuild the old monastery, and he sent letters all over the world, and some folks they gave the money, some folks from Canada, for example, they sent a timber wood for the roof. And there was a time of the unemployment in the part of Scotland amongst the craftsmen, the stonemasons. So the people who were invited there, they had no money to pay them a salary, but they just work for the shelter and the food to rebuild that. And it all started in 1938, and they finished about 1965, 66, something like that. But there are some work still going on.
Okay, the renovation. And I remember from your film that the interior doesn't have any electricity. I think there is candles, right? So it's quite special when you go there.
Candles and the oil lamps, I think. There's a special atmosphere in the evening.
Yes, exactly. Do they do any concerts there, maybe? As I guess such buildings have very good acoustics.
Yes. The very first time I went there, I met some young people. I was young then. I was 30, so. And they had some sort of a rehearsal. I didn't know who they were. I found it years later. They were members of a very famous band called Iona.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of this band?
No, actually not. No.
Well, I recommend it. They play Christian music, and inspired by the Irish music and the Celtic music. Wonderful band.
Need to check it out.
Yes, wonderful band. And I didn't know who they were at the time. So
it's a beautiful place on the very edge of Europe, because that belongs to the hybrids, the Scottish hybrids.
No,
Is it correct?
No. It's the island. The island is, I think, is the National Trust of Scotland. Because
yes, but I'm talking about geography. That this is a part of Scottish hybrids,
so-called Western Isles.
Western Isles, okay.
Yes, or inner hybrids.
Did you manage to maybe travel to any other famous isles around the UK? I don't know, Isle of Man, for instance. Apparently,
yeah,
it's quite
never been there, but I was on the Isle of Skye and the Isle of Lewis, the last one.
Oh,
was just
so you really reached.
Just the edge of the
world. So you
world.
really reached kind of two ends of Europe, because you regularly, at least used to go, and now you're trying to come back to Iona and around. But at the same time, you were traveling for years to Ukraine, which is kind of
Well, yes, I was
Sort of the edge.
I was leading a group of tourists. I used to earn money by leading those tourists into Ukraine, and I used to
So
spend
you can
this money
go to Iona. Yeah, no, that's a very good way.
That was much easier. 2 trips to Ukraine and 1 trip to Iona.
So coming to the end of our meeting, what would you say should be the core understanding and practice nowadays for a Christian who really wants to be true to his faith and follow Christ? And what should we focus on? And whether the Celtic spirituality gives us any useful tools to grow in our faith?
Yes, of course, but the Western Christians also, they have tools, but they do not use those tools. As maybe even most of them do not know they have tools, like a breviary, for instance, a liturgy of the hours. So the ancient monks, they divided a day into sections, and they had special prayers for each of the sections. Let's start with the breviary. It brings the regularity into the Christian life. And the morning prayers and the prayers at noon, and the afternoon prayers and the vespers complete and things like that. The Celtic people, they also had a Celtic breviary. It's on the internet. It's all on the internet. And regularity is the first one. And the next thing is to develop you have to be aware. You have to be aware, the awareness of God. God is everywhere, here and now. There's no need to go to certain place to meet God. God is here. Of course, in some places, it's wonderful to be and to talk to God. And there are some. There's a place on Iona where Adam Nunn, the biographer of St. Columba, says St. Columba used to meet the angels as a hill. It's a wonderful place. Yeah. But first of all, God is everywhere, is ever present, and we are surrounded by the invisible world. There is what the Celtic Christianity has to tell us, that we are not alone, not at all. We are not alone. The world is full of presence of any sort, also the evil presence. So we have to be aware that there are evil presences also. But there is a wonderful poem by the Polish poet Norwid, The Pilgrim, and it reads, I have so much land as my foot covers. When I am, there is the kingdom of God. And the Celts, they have a special way of praying. They stretch their arms, make 3 rounds clockwise, and they started to pray that as far as my arms reaches, there is no place for the evil. And that's it. And they recognize that the world sometime was kidnapped from God, was kidnapped by the enemy. And our task is to regain it, to fight it back and give it back to the Lord. It's a wonderful idea.
Yes, it is a very beautiful idea. And I must say, the book Anamkara that you managed to translate into Polish, and it was so
No,
famous.
it's a friend who translated. I paid him for this.
Okay, and so yeah, so you had that translated. It's a wonderful book. I think it's great for going deeper and you know, going into prayer, going into maybe meditation. I think it's a fantastic thing to actually get it on Audible, because the version that is there is being read by the brother, Pat O'Donoghue, of the late John O'Donoghue. And yes, it's oh yeah, exactly. And it's a beautiful book.
This one I had translated, but I did not publish it.
Exploring our hunger or to belong. Yes. John O'Donoghue uses fantastic language. A beauty, yes. Yeah, his language is beautiful. Like it really makes you cry in some places when you listen to it. It's a great thing, I'd say, for an evening, you know, getting into the mood and started praying. It's a fantastic thing. If somebody likes to read, they can read, but that version on Audible is really fantastic to listen, because you can like do various things during the day and as well listen to a fantastic poet and philosopher. Like the language is beautiful and explain a lot about the Celtic Christianity, you know, the connection to the nature, you know, the closeness of this other worldly presences, you know, when they are especially close around, obviously, well, today we call it Halloween, but it's All Saints Day, really. The core of it.
There's something quite different.
Yes. So yeah, it's a wonderful book, and particularly what moved me in that book when I was listening to it was the like few chapters about death. Yeah, it brought me to tears, but yeah, it showed, you know, the attitude of the Irish towards the death, and all the customs around it, how they kind of allow the soul to gracefully and peacefully, you know, move on to the other world, you know, to the better world. And it's really something, kind of explains the way, you know, customs are around somebody's death.
Well, yeah, but yeah, but it's an interesting thing that the ancient Christians, they did not recognize the people who passed away as the dead. No, they thought they live, they still live, but they live in other circumstances. They live
Yes.
another life, but they live. They reserve the word dead to those dead spiritually. Let the dead bury their dead.
Oh. Yes. Yeah, I guess that's the core of our belief, right?
They got asleep in Christ. They rest in peace. They rest in God. Not they are dead. No, they live. Those who do not believe, they are dead spiritually.
Ah, yes, of course.
Because dead men cannot do nothing. How can dead men bury the other man? No. Christ meant those people who are dead spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What would you say? It occurred to me because over the last 3 years, I think people, well, so-called woke up to various issues in the world, and there is a lot of talk that that situation we are in at the minute, it's so to speak, a spiritual fight, really.
Yes.
It has
Yes,
a dimension much bigger than just our local, issues and problems that we've had over the last 3 years. It's of quite big magnitude. Apart from the fact that a lot of people kind of turn back to faith, Christianity, there is another movement of people, even here in Ireland, in particular, moving to paganism.
Yes.
As this kind
Yes,
of deep, original, so to speak, essence of what the Irish were or what it means. So, what would you say? How would you comment those kind of two ways?
Yes, but there's a lot of literature. When I started to travel, I traveled to Glastonbury. Glastonbury is a special place connected with King Arthur, and it was King Arthur's Avalon. Geoffrey Rush wrote a book, the Arthur's Avalon, the Story of Glastonbury. Wonderful book. But interesting thing is that looking from the plane, from the helicopter, you see the signs of zodiac just as printed in the landscape, and the aerial photo of a Cadbury castle connected with King Arthur. That was a shape of anvil. As you know, with the myth, Excalibur was placed in the anvil, stood on the rock. It's interesting. But the place, Glastonbury, is full of New Age people and New Age shops, oracles, things like that, pagan literature, and even the druid who is on the top of the Glastonbury tower, so-called the hill, and with a big sword, and he makes a members of the Druid Society with this sword. I don't know. You have to pay for this, I think. But there are some places like New Age tea shop, for instance, when you hear the New Age music, things like that. A lot of very strange people, very in very strange dresses.
Yes, but what I came across in terms of this kind of revival of paganism is that actually the pagans I'm talking about and kind of came across, they separate themselves very distinctively from New Age. Like they say that this is not what we are representing, and it's not about really,
yes,
these New Age ceremonies. It's way deeper, kind of to the.
Yeah. Yes, there is another society, they call it Wicca, which you connect with witchcraft, the witches and sorcerers and things like that. And there's also another thing, they call it the old religion. There's a couple, English couple, I don't know if they still live, because it was 30 years ago. I first met their names, John and Kathleen Matthews, worldwide specialist for the Arthurian things. And she was described, the Kathleen Matthews, as a priestess of the old religion. And this is also popular in Russia and in Ukraine. In Ukraine, it's called Runvira. They also built the stone circles, and they placed the wooden images of the so-called gods and things like that. And I've been to such a places. Yes, there is a revival in that. They say that Christianity spoiled their natural way of living and things like that.
Yes, we have here in Ireland a famous, how to speak, like he's kind of well, he's an artist. He has some, you know, professional life behind him in the US. He wrote, he makes some documentaries about, you know, old Celtic, you know, megaliths, all that kind of very ancient artifacts in Ireland. He's dealing also with occult, essentially. And he's pagan. His name is Thomas Sheridan, and I must say, you've heard about him. So he was very helpful, I think, for people here in Ireland that followed him. I was following him as well. You know, like he obviously has his views about so-called Abrahamics. So I'm kind of, you know, letting it this year and letting it out the other year. However, he was very helpful, I think, to get people through those tough times. And of course, you can be, you know, very picky about what you're taking from his messages. But he's quite an interesting character, and quite honest about, you know, the way he lives and what he suggests people, you know, to do and how to deal with this whole situation that we found ourselves recently in. So yeah, it's quite interesting, but he's definitely saying that has nothing to do with the New Age, and none of those, you know, kind of fancy dressing ups, you know, for, I don't know, Nordic pagans and people like that. I'm not very well, you know, informed about exactly what people, you know, calling themselves pagans do, but some of that is quite theatrical, supposed to be like that. So he is definitely kind of setting himself apart from that. But he's quite an interesting character. Yeah, but we for him are the Abrahamics that spoiled Ireland.
We had a very good scholar in St. Patrick things, Professor Czarnowski. I have his works in 5 volumes, and he was well known as the scholar who explored all the things connected to St. Patrick and the Celtic Christianity, and you know, in a very, very scholar way, not in a way of ritual or New Age. No, New Age is very strange because you know, if pagan religion, if pagan beliefs were of any value, those people would not surrender to St. Patrick's teaching.
Yeah, I suppose.
They would refuse this. They would reject it. But St. Patrick and St. Columba, they won. There were hundreds of stories. For instance, when St. Columba wanted to sail from Iona to the mainland, or something like this, not the mainland, to the Isle of Mull. So druids gathered on the shore, and they started to cast spells against him. And he made the sign of a cross. He prayed, and well, in spite of the wind, which was against him, he sailed to the Isle of Mull. And in one places, the chieftain closed the gate, and he prayed, and the gate collapsed. There are plenty of such stories, and in the book of in the book called The Life of St. Columba by Adam Nunn, the 9th abbot of Iona, I think there's a very first story of the monster of Loch Ness.
Ah, yes.
That the St. Columba was walking along the lake, and he met a group of people carrying on the stretches. They carried the corpse of a man, very badly wounded, and they told the same that the monster appeared, and he made this man like that, and the saint took on the boat with his disciples, and when the monster appeared, he made the sign of the cross, and the monster disappeared in the depths and was never seen.
Until recently, yeah.
Yeah, there's a monster center. I've been there for many times, and it's all about the monster. Even the pencils and things like that with the monster, the marks with monster. Yeah. Oh, this is from Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay,
those books I showed you, it's just maybe 1/10 of my collection of Irish and Celtic books. I love Ireland. I never been there. I love Ireland.
You have to come. You have
to
come. Maybe you should plan this year, to kind of share a bit of your time between Iona and Ireland.
I have lots of Irish recordings. I love the band of Chieftains. I love them.
Oh, yes, they are very popular.
And Dubliners. Many others.
It's time. It's time to come. It's time to come and visit the place.
Well, I have a lot of friends in England, so I travel quite often to England. I know no one in Scotland, so I have to travel all by myself with the tent. No, now I have friends in Scotland, yes, but this is one point. They moved from Elgin, far north, to the Melrose, to the borders. But from the Melrose is just 90 minutes driving to Glasgow and 90 minutes driving to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And about an hour driving to the holy island of Lindisfarne. The last time I was in Lindisfarne was 20 years ago, so it's time to visit the place again.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, we keep encouraging you to come over here. We also have friends here now, and yeah, there's a lot of
most
things to
important
see.
thing traveling there is the place to stay, because
well, the place to stay will find itself. Not even one. It will be many.
Because hotels and B&Bs are far too expensive for us. Yeah.
Yes. So in this case, you will have a place to stay. In Dublin, you will have a place to stay, like in my place, and in the west of Ireland.
I love Guinness. I love Guinness, the original one.
Yes. So you have to sit with us and have some.
And
so like from Ireland is just an hour flight, or even not that much.
Have you ever tried Martha's?
No, well, I'm not into Guinnesses and those dark beers, but my husband is an expert on beer, so I'm sure he can introduce you to all the craft beers, which are very popular nowadays. Those little breweries that make all sorts of beers. So there's a lot to see and a lot to try in Ireland. So we encourage you to visit us, and we will organize the places to stay. There's no problem.
Well, the nearest airport is Shannon, I think.
Well, no. Well, Shannon is on the west. of Ireland. The closest from England would be Dublin, obviously.
Yeah, you have airport in Dublin?
There is the biggest airport in Dublin, plus there is Shannon, that's on the west. Very close to myself, there is a small airport in Knock. Knock is actually also a shrine, a famous shrine, the pilgrimage place. So yeah, there is and there are flights to England, to many places from Knock. Definitely to Edinburgh, I think. Yeah, there is definitely a flight to Scotland from Knock. Cork as well has an airport, and of course Belfast. So there's good few connections.
Yes, I found an interesting place in this book, The Holy Places of the British Isles. I have no idea where is this. Somewhere in Ireland. It's they say that in Middle Ages, the local folks, they believed they discovered the enter to hell. And
well, so you need to visit me, Dr. Przybył, because that's literally like 20 minutes away from my place.
Yes. Oh boy.
Yes. I live in Roscommon. It's County Roscommon, and this is the place when all the Halloween stories started. There is this little place.
The place is Station Island in Donegal.
Okay, so that must be something else, because the entrance to the other world, according to the old, Irish tradition, is in County Roscommon.
And it was called the St. Patrick's Purgatory.
Okay, so that must be something else, yeah. But Donegal is not. Yeah, it's all west. So if you wanted to go to the very west of Ireland, you would probably have to fly to Knock. Would be probably the best.
John O'Donoghue.
Go up.
Yeah, John O'Donoghue, he lived in Connemara and he praised the place all the time.
Oh yeah, Connemara is absolutely wonderful. It's a beautiful place, especially in summer. It's magnificent. There is a very nice picturesque route that you can take by car. We've done it 2 years ago, and it's wonderful. And we have also friends in Mayo, so there's no problem with staying.
Yeah, but I wanted to go to the Skelling Michael, but the friend, he said it's rather impossible because of the movie Star Wars. There are plenty of people visiting Skelling Michael because of this film of the last series.
Yeah. There is that island as well. Yeah. Yes, a lot of things to see in Ireland. Okay, thank you very much for your time for us. It's been 1 hour 40 minutes. We're talking about all things Celtic and Irish. That's been a fantastic discussion, and we've learned a lot. So we encourage our viewers to check out Iona as a lovely pilgrimage place, and reach for books by John O'Donoghue. I think it will be really a fantastic adventure for the mind and soul. And with that, I bid everybody goodbye. See you next week. And for our guests, you can just maybe stay a little bit with us after the show. I say good night to everybody. Thank you very much for staying with us.
Good night, everyone. I hope my language is understandable.
Absolutely.